Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
Do you want to tell the whānau? Do you want to tell the whānau why we're due a late fee and that you're feeling a bit smug at the moment? You want to tell them why?
Pat had some technical issues, which means that his computer is garbage and needs to be replaced, and he is poor and unworthy. So that's why we're late. As I say, I'm hoping that neither of us have any technical issues in the coming 90-minute hour.
60-minute hour. So thanks for joining us tonight. We've got quite a bit of a conversation tonight around the Treaty Principles Bill, because we've got Dr. Alistair Reese joining us in a couple of minutes. You guys will remember him from his previous exciting episode we did with him after Waitangi Day. Alistair talked on the marae as part of the Waitangi Day Dawn service. He's also one of the signatories to the 400 church members. So we really want to have a look at that. I don't know if you've seen, Troy, but freaking what Seymour's doing pushing back against the churches, it's really interesting. Basically kind of going, oh well, this is not what churches should be doing. It's a fascinating wee thing.
Well, this is classic for Seymour, because he always has an opinion on everything, whether he knows about it or not. You know, he'll tell government departments that that's not what they should be doing, and now he's telling churches that they should go and do other church stuff that isn't sticking up for human rights. He's a bizarre, weird little man. So, yeah, on brand.
And he was on breakfast this morning, so we'll actually have a look at some of the things he was saying as well. And also, Shane Reti. I mean, I put a tweet out today that just said Shane Reti is a ghoul. Hawke's Bay DHB, Hawke's Bay Health, had a situation where Māori and Pacific children got free visits to the GP, and Shane Reti instructed that's not part of the coalition's agreement. It doesn't sit well within the coalition, so let's scrap that. And I mean, what a ghoul. Any reason to pull free medical care away from children, no matter what reason they've got it for, just seems very ghoulish to me. And it's the only word I could think of. He's a ghoul. It's revolting.
I remember thinking when I woke up this morning, just like, oh, you know, it's been a little bit quiet on the whole anti-Māori thing. and then I opened up stuff and I was like, there we go.
That feels like a day that ends in a Y, because there's some Māori bashing somewhere. So the day that ends in a Y, it's got to be happening on those days. Also, just some bits and bobs along the way. We haven't got really much coverage on it tonight. We might have a couple of young American podcasters tomorrow joining us, should they say yes, about the debate, Kamala and Trump. Happening about 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow time. We're not going to live stream it, but I will put on the Facebook page and my Twitter feed as well. If you want to watch along with people, I'll be tweeting it, but if you want to watch along, the guys from the Vanguard, Brian Tyler Cohen, David Packman, there's a bunch of really good places to go if you want to do a watch along as well. I'll just be watching the actual debate and having a big old chat about it, and more. Yeah, and rest in peace to James Earl Jones Jr. James Earl Jones. This is CNN. There might be a gap in the market there. So that was really sad to hear about James Earl Jones today passing away. But he had a good innings, 93, I think, Chewy. I saw the classiest mention today was from Mark Hamill. Rest in peace, Dad. He tweeted out, which I thought was pretty spot on. So yeah.
Look, as someone that has been a lifelong Star Wars fan, yeah, it was a strange one to sort of see that pop up on stuff and go, oh wow, that's crazy. And he's was it the Lion King? I've forgotten. Daddy Lion. It was Daddy Lion's voice as well.
Mufasa.
Was it Mufasa?
I think so. I could be wrong. Yeah, because Scar was the brother and Mufasa was the dad.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is Mufasa. Yeah. No, you're right there. And his fantastic. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's Conan the Barbarian. He's it.
No, haven't seen that.
Have you seen that? I'm going to find it because the picture is amazing, and we'll come back to it.
Interesting story about James Earl Jones when it came to Star Wars. He thought it was a little kind of science fiction flick, and so he got paid, X amount of dollars to spend an afternoon doing all the voicing. The first two Star Wars, his name wasn't in the credits because he chose to. He wanted the 7-foot actor who played the role of Darth Vader to get the credit, and at the same time, I forget his name, the Sir who played Obi-Wan in the original series. He signed on to a contract that gave him a back end, and his estate still gets money today. And James Earl Jones got a check for doing this voicing, and then that was the end of it. So interesting, where you see in hindsight what might have worked. But anyway, you say it was a surprise, of course, but then when you think 93, you kind of go, well, you know, a 93-year-old passing away today, most people wouldn't question that. But yep, sad news. All right. Sorry,
the other thing is Vader's. A lot of people know this, but Vader's body actor, thought that his voice was going to be in the movie right up until he saw it at the premiere, which is gutting.
If you want to see something funny, go and have a look up the original voice to Darth Vader, because when he acted all the scenes, you hear this voice doing the Darth Vader stuff, and you just kind of go, okay, I see why you changed it. That makes more sense now. All right, let's get to your. Oh, you're going to show it to us. Is that Conan? Is it?
Look at that. Look at that. I mean, wig.
I've seen it. How old is he there though? He looks like he was, I guess, 80s.
Well, he's 93 now.
Yes, I guess it's 50s, isn't it?
The 80s. Yeah.
Wow. It's always scary when you hear about very, very elderly people, and you go, "Do you know? 40 years ago, he was 53." That always freaks me out more than kind of the age that you are, you know. So, all right, let's move on, because Alice is waiting for us in the waiting room, and it's very impolite of us to keep our guests waiting. I want to welcome to the show Dr. Alistair Reese. Alistair, good evening, sir. Welcome again to the show.
Oh, tēnā kōrua. Yeah, good to be with you both. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for giving us a little bit of time tonight. Let's just jump straight into this, shall we? If I know what I'm doing, which I don't because my computer crashed. This is why it crashed last time when I tried to put up my screen. Hopefully it won't crash this time. I should have done this. Oh, there we go. It didn't crash. Let's just jump straight into it. Open letter from 400 plus Christian leaders on the Treaty Principle Bill. The actual letter is here. Support Te Tiriti o Waitangi and oppose the proposed treaty's principle bill. The treaty principle bill may destabilise and harm Aotearoa New Zealand. Te Tiriti o Waitangi as a conventional relationship, a covenant between parties. And we call on all members of Parliament to oppose the treaty's principle bill. I guess just firstly, Alistair, why did you sign it in particular?
I think the thing that upsets me the most is that I used this terminology before, Pat, when I described it. It's like people picking the scab off a scar and then exposing the scar, to infection. There's a scar in the land. There's what I call, or Māori use the term mamai. There's a deep pain, a deep hurt in the land that comes from our 175-year history, where Te Tiriti has been dishonoured, forgotten about, trashed, all kinds of things. And since 1975, I'd say, 1985, the second reading of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill, it's like the country, and from a Pākehā point of view, we started on a journey to try and turn things around and perhaps give the honour to the treaty that it was due. And it's been a backwards, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But this one here is a 3-step back. So the reason being is, contrary to David Seymour or ACT's proclamation that it's to shut down dialogue, it's not to shut down dialogue. It's just that that's the wrong place for the type of dialogue that they wanted to have. There's a power imbalance that they're holding all the cards, and they're actually deciding what the treaty says and what its repercussions will be, and then they will enact that. That's the power imbalance that is the fora, ostensibly, for the discussions that we want to have. So it's, for me, essentially, this pain that's in the land that's been there for 175 years. It's in the process of being healed, and we see it all around us. Beautiful, expressions, tūranga waiwai, kingi tūheitia, other expressions of this re-emergence of a people and re-emergence of a hope, and then this sledgehammer to perhaps, address some little issues around the treaty that may need addressing, comes and just slams it. And sorry to mix my metaphors, all these metaphors all over the place, but so that's the main reason that I put my name to it, is that I thought this is really just going to exacerbate the pain, the mamai that's in the land already.
I was quite keen to talk to a couple of the people who have signed it. And, I went through the list, and there's probably 20 or 30 people in there that I know personally who have signed this letter. I was quite keen to talk to one or two of the people who are from, I guess, what looks from the outside to be a more conservative evangelical world, because it seems within this document and all these names, you have got a mix of sort of more progressive Christians, centrist Christians, and across to kind of more conservative Christians as well. Why do you think this is resonating with such a diverse range of people of the faith, rather than being taken up by sort of one slice, which might be seen as kind of the social justice part of the Christian church?
Pat, you and I have known each other for a few years now. We first encountered each other actually over this kaupapa, really, on Barrier. And if I don't know how many years ago that was, let's say it's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
If this kaupapa had to come up then, this list would have been much shorter.
Right.
What we've seen, I think, over the last 10, 15 years is a gradual buy-in by different aspects of the church. So if in late 1970s, early 1980s, when I think led probably by the Anglican Church in terms of their grappling with the treaty, they were, from a Pākehā point of view, they were the forerunners. And they were the leaders. Then we had also the Catholic Church came in, Methodist Church came in, but they led the way and were probably the sole representatives of a church demographic that was supportive of the treaty. The evangelical and particularly the Pentecostal church has been really slow, in my view, to pick this up. But it is, I think it's kind of a work of grace. It's a bit of a miracle territory, as you're rightly observing, that there's a wider group of churches that are now being, so I don't know if it's an adjustment to their theology or whatever, that they've actually allowed now the thinking to come in, hey, that, God could be in this. So, this is something that we can get involved with. I think there's some aspects that have been brought out, like this covenantal language around the treaty that's quite to the fore now. And I think that so the more conservative churches, that's given them perhaps an entranceway,
right.
Some language, some theological language that they can identify with and say, oh, okay, it's not extraneous, to who we are. That's actually, this is our language. This is theological language. So, and I'm hoping that, conscience at the end of the day, when people are faced by the extraordinary injustice that has been in the land and continues to be in the land, that once people start to pay it some deep and close attention, they get caught by this injustice and say, oh, we need to do something about this.
I did notice going through the list, though, that the pastor that Mr. Luxon was under in Auckland didn't sign on to this. Just a little thing I noticed. I was reading it. Hey, Chewy, you're kind of Captain No Religion here, sort of thing. What are your thoughts around the kind of church getting out and going, this needs to be sorted?
I might not be a person of faith, but I am a person of history. And certainly when I think of, say, the civil rights struggle in the US, there was obviously some very progressive religious leaders that put their weight behind that, and white church folk marching with black folk saying that this has to change, and a core group here in New Zealand of anti-apartheid protesters were a big part of that protest movement as well. And I think it can't be dismissed as easily as David Seymour thinks that it can be. And I think, I have a lot of criticism for religious institutions and stuff like that. They don't always get it right. But I think this time they're very, very definitely in the right. And it comes from that point of view of caring for your community and pointing out something that is not fair and not just. They're right in this. And Seymour thinks that he can just brush it aside. Did he look at the list?
Yeah.
Like if somebody gave me a list of 400 names and said, "Hey, bro, you're doing this wrong," I'd probably give it some thought.
We're talking about 400 names. It would be quite interesting, Alistair. I don't know if anyone's done this, but what the number of people under those leaders would be. Like if it's an Anglican vicar, how many people under him in the congregation? I wonder how many people these 440 represent, meaning, who are under them. Do we have any idea? Because it would be a lot.
Yeah. Excuse me, Pat. If we've been really, I was actually interviewed in a place today, and it was critiqued, actually, that the statement was made, these guys don't actually represent their congregation. So, this is we can't assume that because a leader has actually come forth and spoken this out, that they actually carry all the sentiments of their congregation. So yeah, it's still, I think, quite a unique gathering of some pretty awesome people, actually, when you look through that list. I'm a bit biased, of course.
Yeah. No, there's some amazing names here. I'm also interested. I heard a few kind of, shall we say, contrary conversations today as to what we're talking about right now. And the idea of church and state got brought up. And the idea of, to keep charitable status, places aren't supposed to participate in politics. And places like, I think, Greenpeace and Family First have lost their charitable status. What do you think just about the concept of church leaders getting involved in politics? Is that what they're doing here? Is this the church getting involved in politics, or is this kind of social commentary slightly different from that?
Look, I think it's a false dichotomy. Pat, we're all political. How it's polis. Go back to the Greek word. I mean, it's people. Politics is about people. You can't be a person without being political. Even in your silence, and this is my damnation of the church over the last however many years, was it silence. Actually, that silence, and we could extrapolate that out into other spheres as well. But mere silence is a political act. So it's an impossibility to be apolitical. And so I can understand what people are wanting to say in terms of this separation of church and state, and those are important discussions. But to say that it's like saying sport and politics don't mix. So stay out of the anti-apartheid. Chewy, you were talking about that before. For how many years did that hold people back from actually, saying something about South Africa, just because we had that mantra saying, sports can't get involved in that realm.
Yeah, which is nonsense. You speak to, well, not what you can now, but when you could speak to Nelson Mandela, he has stories about getting encouragement while he was on Ellis Island from hearing what had happened on the field in Waikato. Like, you can't have any more sport and politics. What I typically think when I hear that, Alistair, maybe it's the same in the, religion or religion and politics, is when people say sports and politics should never mix. What they're typically saying is, I disagree with you, and this is my MO to trying to stop this conversation. Like you see it in America a lot, where LeBron James should never say anything; he should shut up and dribble, is the famous quote. But then if there's this kind of Christian, NFL player who kneels and all this kind of stuff, then they get all exposure on Fox News. So it's really just furthering their narrative from going one way they shouldn't do it, the other way they should do it. I mean, I just think that's kind of what it comes down to, is people using it for their own agenda. Can we have a quick look at one of the things this is a reply from David Seymour on his social medias. One of the things I'd like to point out or ask you about most of all is the last paragraph he wrote. He talks about treaty principles bill should be dumped. I'm not a religious person. My parents baptized me. I've never regularly attended church. However, I do have enormous respect for the core Christian principle of Imago Dei. We are each made in the image of God. I like it because it automatically means we all have equal dignity. It is one of the foundations of liberal democracy, etc., etc., etc. That belief, however, is at odds with the recent interpretation of the Treaty of Waitangi. It would be unusual to say the least for 2,000 years of Christian faith to be overturned by one page of the treaty signed by a few hundred people in the country. So he's putting on his theologian hat there a little bit, I guess. The treaty principles bills reinforcing that all humans have equal rights is something that Christian leaders should be supporting if they want to play in politics. And this is the last paragraph. If you wonder why church attendance and reportedly Christianity is in decline in New Zealand today, today's display of church leaders abandoning a core, if not the core Christian belief to play politics might be a clue.
God.
You got any response to that, Alistair, just in general?
Yeah, gosh, there's so much to unpack in that. You know, how long have we got, Pat? But one of the things I think that is often trotted out is that this about the treaty is that it, if, for example, Māori are accorded a particular right, then that becomes unequal in terms of the liberal democratic perspective. And I think one of the things I want to have a billboard. Maybe you could back me in this billboard. And this is what I just want to say simply, Pat. Māori are special. Get over it.
Yeah.
The treaty was addressed to ngā rangatira me ngā hapu. It was addressed to them, right? And so within the context of what the treaty is all about, there is a specialness to tangata whenua. There is a specialness to tino rangatiratanga. So this specialness is something that has been enunciated, and we need to understand it and actually get over it. But if we go further than that, actually we all have all kinds of specialnesses in terms of the way that society is organized. I actually, as tangata tiriti, have a specialness as well. So I get accorded some specialnesses that actually other people don't get accorded. So it's all about understanding the nature of the specialness that we occupy in some ways. So so that's one thing, is that somehow, for some reason, people find it very, very difficult. I'm talking about Pākehā particularly, if they perceive maybe that Māori might be getting some advantage that they are not getting, which is counterintuitive, given our history, given the all the data, etc., etc. So that's one thing. The idea of one person, one vote is another thing that is often trotted out as well. So our understanding of what the definition of democracy is hugely simplistic. And as I actually wrote this in an ODT article a little while ago, it's quite ironic that, for example, some of these minor parties are actually opposing anything that doesn't equate to a one person, one vote. I thought actually MMP was something that we introduced to have a better representation of people, and it's certainly not a one person, one vote system. We've actually gone beyond that because we understand that doesn't work. Finally, one more point.
Sure.
This whole aspect about democracy, there's such a thing called the tyranny of the majority. And that's the other thing that really frightens me about this bill, that, the weight of a majority can sometimes inflict a tyranny upon a minority. And so, again, that's a reason why I opposed this bill.
100%. We say that here often. Sometimes doing what the minority wants and need is the right thing to do. And if people don't believe that, then just start to look at things that happen within minority communities. So when we say the word minority, Alistair, I think people always go to race. But like everyone's a minority. I own a dog. Dog owners are a minority. There are dog parks set up for us that other people don't use. You know, it's like if we think about it more like a people group, doesn't have to be a race, then it becomes, you know, you can do the right thing for that small group of people. For dog owners, sure. For Māori, people go, I don't know about that. Not quite so much for dog owners. Yeah, fine. For people with breast cancer, of course. For Māori, don't know about that. So we're going to be doing a bit more on this tonight, Alistair, about what just happened in Hawke's Bay and Shane Reti deciding that just carte blanche Māori and Pacific children no longer get free GP visits because it's outside the purview of the coalition agreement. And that's the kind of thing. It's like small group of people need help within the medical system. Prostate cancer people, sure. Māori, don't know about that. No, can't do that. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Have you had any blowback from this? And I ask you this because I haven't brought up who it is, but a friend of ours, I don't know if you saw this on Facebook today, did a radio interview today and quite quickly afterwards got this sent to his inbox. You're a deluded satanic piece of shit. You are from the serpent seed. I'm not going to say who that came to, but someone we both know. Alistair, have you had any blowback about the signatory and the communications you've been having out there in public?
And from some quite surprising quarters, really, but nothing of that, nothing quite that matches that rhetoric. That's pretty sharp rhetoric, that one there. But as someone said to me today, well, you're going to put your head above the parapet, then just expect it. So, and it's a good exercise for me, really. You know, there is some sort of admonition that we've probably heard, Pat, about loving our enemies, or, you know, turning other cheeks and all of those things. So it's a good spiritual exercise, really. So, and just in conclusion, as I said, from some quite surprising quarters, my name has now been included in some quite disparaging comments.
Welcome to the world of the misfits, Alistair. I've been here for a while. Come on in. The water's fine. Very, finally from me, Chewy, you're welcome to go off next if you want, but finally from me, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but our mate Bomber does a Tuesday night podcast. I just want to play this. We're not going to go into Bomber's show tonight. We sometimes review what he's been doing, but I want people to listen to how Bomber introduced this topic tonight. It's kind of amusing, but, you know, Shakespeare said, jest is oft-proved prophets. What we often say, many a truth be told in jest. Have a listen to how Bomber introduced this topic tonight.
And apparently, God doesn't like ACT. 440 Christian leaders have signed an open letter begging politicians to vote against and shun ACT's treaty principles referendum bill, while Chris Luxon is on every media channel explaining that MMP has made him vote for this radioactive toxic Trexit agenda. Damien, now I'm no theologian. I certainly am not. However, a few brief quotes from the Bible, if I will. Matthew 5:3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Mark 10:21, and Jesus, looking at them, loved them and said to him, you lack one thing. Go sell all that you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me. And Luke 6:20, and he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, blessed are you who are the poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Again, I'm no theologian, but the vibe seems to be Jesus is pretty keen on a capital gains tax and doesn't sound like he wants to create loopholes for property speculators. Why shouldn't God Almighty, the being of light, the father of all, why shouldn't he smite ACT?
That's a little introduction for you there. Of course, you left out the one, you know, easier for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle than to get into heaven. Alistair, I know he was taking the piss a little bit or having a bit of fun with it, but, you know, got any feedback on the actual content of what he said?
I love it, Pat. I love it. Yeah, I could get excited. No, he had me on the edge of my pew.
Hey, we've got a time to wrap up shortly. Chew, is there anything else you want to jump in here with? Any questions or comments before we wrap up?
I just want to loop back to this whole, basically, you know, religion and church should stay out of politics. If you exist in this world, then you have a political opinion. And I've said this with less serious stuff, like people's perception that for some reason local city councillors don't have a political allegiance one way or the other, which is just laughable. And I think that goes through to parishioners and churchgoers and church leaders as well. Of course they do. Of course they do. You would have to have no brain and no eyes to not have an opinion. And whenever someone throws that out, you know, if it's a musician or an actor or some other public figure, and in this case, a church leader, is that someone turns around and says, well, maybe you should just concentrate on running your church. I think you've won at that point, because that's the only argument that they've got. Sit down, shut up. Not a counter argument. It's just, I don't want to talk to you. So, yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it. If you've got an opinion, share it. Because if you're silent, you whether you like it or not, you're on the side of the oppressor. So speak up.
What's that old adage? If there is a Nazi sitting, not that we're using this word Nazi blatantly, but it's the saying, there's a Nazi sitting at the table with 11 other people not saying anything, then there's 12 Nazis sitting at a table. Is that the saying? Something like that? Yep. Alistair, you can wrap us up. What would you like to leave us with?
I'd like to leave us with actually a further challenge, because I think we're starting to talk. It's a talk for another time, for another month, another year, Pat. But this sacred secular divide, I think we've referred to New Zealand as a secular country, and I think that's probably something of the roots of where perhaps the Liberal Democratic ACT Party, that's how they express themselves, thinking and assuming that the space is secular. But if let me say, there's two things here. If we're really inviting an Indigenous worldview to actually occupy a seat at the table, then secularity sort of, it goes out the window. So we actually have to make room in our public spaces to find a place that we can begin to talk about the sacred spaces as well. I'll finish on one other thing, is that I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was with you, but two kaumātua from Tauranga 2 years ago rang me up and said, we've got a petition, we want you to support us in it. And I said, of course, well, you know, what's a petition? And they said, we want the fourth article, the oral article of the treaty, to be honoured by the Crown. And so that we got a petition going. Right. They've both died in the last 2 years, but that petition, I'm going to stand before the Select Committee on the 22nd of October to argue for an oral article has as much credibility as a written article, and that leads us into that whole area of where sacred and secular sits within our society. I know it's complicated, but it's a conversation that we need to have, because there's a lot of hypocrisy going on around the nation right now in terms of the karakia, non-karakia. We just need to come out and say, hey, have we got a space for this or have we not?
Yeah, very cool. I tell you what, I want to leave us with one thing. I'm watching the series 1883 at the moment, Alistair, really enjoying it. And there is a scene that I saw just in tonight's episode where I guess white Americans, whatever you'd call them, pilgrims, cowboys, are traveling across the plains, and they're coming up to Native American lands, indigenous lands, and they've got quite a good relationship. They're kind of trading with them and stuff. And one of the guys goes up to the Native American and he says, "What's that?" And he's pointing to a conquistador helmet, you know, like a metal helmet that the Spanish. And he goes, "What's that?" And I'll read you the quote because it's here. So the guy's name is James. He says, "What that?" And the Native American says, "It's from the Spanish. You know, they tried to take our land too." James quickly replied, "I ain't taking nothing. I'm just passing through." Even though the man knows James is yet to wrong his people, so he's an ally, you could say. He says to this is what the Native American says: "Our land cannot be taken. White man thinks he took it. White man is like the wolf. He kills everything until only the wolves are left. And then the wolves kill each other. And then there's nothing. And our land is free again." And James listens, responds, and goes, That sounds about right. Just watching it tonight, it just made me think these stories from around the world, you know, and how when you think about the indigenous stories from around the world, how they just seem to be, you know, 5% different, but themes behind them seem so the same. So
Can I just close with one more quote, Pat?
Sure.
The late Moana Jackson, sitting with his moko, with his grandson, and he was talking to him about the treaty, and he said, the treaty is like a mountain. It will never move.
Very good. It's Dr. Alistair Reese. Hey, Alistair, thanks so much for joining us tonight, mate. The door's always open. Anytime you want to come on, you just let us know and we'll chuck you in.
Ngā mihi.
Speak to you.
Ngā mihi.
Speak to you again soon. Thanks, Alistair. All right, Chewy, there you go. Now, super quick, because my computer crashed, a whole bunch of my videos aren't queued up. So, Chewy, what we're going to do now is you're going to go and have a look at the super chats, and I'm going to quickly go and line up the next set of stories in silence with what's going on over here.
Okay. Kiwi Bird with $2 super chat, flexing that they were on time and we were late, I assume. And Campbell with the $9 or $8.99 super chat contribution to the Pat new PC and Chewy new webcam fund. See, this is what you've cultivated here.
I'm sorry.
Allo with an absent fee.
Oh.
Which is a new one. And Brent Hutchison, Luxon lied. There is no way this went to select committee only on ACT votes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing to remember. In fact, I noticed someone, what were they talking about? It was a Nicole McKee thing and how she's doing things behind closed doors. And I noticed someone it might have even been old mate Clint on Twitter that day saying, but remember, she might be doing it behind closed doors, but they have to pass it as a government. So it's not just on her. I thought it was a very, very good point and something that we should always remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Kiwi Skirt, Seymour still winning worst human. Good to get that update. Nicola close second these days. Citizen Gold with very generous $10. You just know that Seymour would have been praising them if the letter supported him. He's very transactional person.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a person. Still the worst example of humanity, though. Tiffany Twisted. David and Nicole say that they're Māori, but they aren't practicing equity and the greater good for all. Oxymoronic.
Or just moronics. See what I did there.
Mr. Arvid contributing to our billboard fund.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I wasn't sure that we had a billboard fund, but
well, just from what Alistair said maybe we could get behind the billboard he wants to do, which is Māori are special, get over it. Maybe we should do a t-shirt.
Yeah,
maybe.
True.
Actually, that's not a bad idea. The thing I was thinking was I don't think TUI do their billboards anymore but it would have to be a double negative. The TUI billboard would be Māori are not special. Yeah, right. But it might get lost. Might get lost in translation. I do like this one from Guru as well. Jesus was a Palestinian socialist. Absolutely true. Sorry, you go to me.
Isn't it strange though, right? Because that's the thing that I struggled with. I know the cliff notes of Christianity, right? I've never read the Bible, never been to church. But all the stories that get promoted there, love your neighbor and, hung out with prostitutes and poor people and just, I heard one person sum up the story of Jesus by saying he went against the government and he got nailed to a tree for saying everybody should be nice to each other.
Yeah, and hey, the biggest thing to always remember, right? This is the biggest thing to always remember about various Christian beliefs, is that when he got pissy, like when he was like, "We are not going to put up with this," he was always aiming it at the church, like the church of the time. He was always talking about
the establishment, chucking money lenders out of the temple and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yep.
And there's so many that forget that. I've never been able to reconcile that.
Yeah.
Ken with the $8.99. How often have we heard politicians say that that someone they don't agree with is just playing politics?
And that's what we were saying. They do it. Honestly, when people say, XYZ social commentary is not appropriate, what they're saying is, I don't agree with you. Like I was just saying in that interview, when Fox News, when LeBron James speaks out, Fox News, literally, Laura Ingraham says, shut up and dribble. I can't remember, Tim Tebow, I think it is, was an NFL player. And he was like, he'd always bow his knee and pray. And of course, they amplified his messages because it was Phil. So what they're basically saying is, if you disagree with me, I'm going to find a way to tell you to shut up. You shouldn't be doing it. If you agree with me, we'll amplify it as much as we can. And you see it everywhere.
And last but no way least, $10 from Daniel there. Seymour claiming he doesn't attend church regularly. How he attended back in March and crashed his e-bike on the way home. Maybe Sky Daddy was trying to tell him something.
All right. Normally at the start of the show, we have a bit of a catch up of what we've been doing. I found an album today I want to share with people. If you're a 660 fan, now this just popped up in my recommendations, so I don't know whether it's literally brand new or it's been out for a while. It's 2024. I can't recommend highly enough 660's The Grassroots album. If you're a fan of 660, this is them playing live at Stewart Island. They did that tour of the pubs and stuff and the community halls. This is their. I'm not going to play anything, obviously, or else we'll get taken off. But if you're a fan of 660, the Grassroots album, I don't know if it was released today, but it got recommended to me today, and I've listened to it twice already. And yeah, if you like their music, I saw them in Dunedin when they supported Ed Sheeran. That's when I first got to learn about them. And if you want to check it out, it's pretty awesome. And it's very, very, very live feel to it. They finished the whole album by going, thanks, Stewart Island. See you down the pub. Which I just think is completely Kiwi. It's fantastic. All right. Anything else we're looking at, Chewy, or is it time to move on?
No, that has cleared the list.
I think we've just had a visitor, though. Hang on, give me a second. Have we had a visitor? I present, and then I share. I do an extra camera, and then I go, oh, look who decided to join us. She wasn't here at the start of the show. She just thought she'd wander on down after she's had the fun with upstairs people and then hang out with downstairs people. It is funny. Sometimes we can't find her around 9 o'clock and you walk down to the studio and she's there. So like on a Saturday night, it's like, where's the dog? It's like, look at the time. Go, oh, I wonder if, come downstairs. She's waiting. And you have to look out. Dude, don't you know how to read a fucking calendar? There's no show tonight. Jesus, get out of here. All right. Now, I know we just talked about him, but we're going to have a look at Seymour this morning on breakfast. I was a little bit disappointed with this interview because they started it by talking about how many churches have signed up to that open letter, but in the 10 minutes they had with him, they never asked him about the churches. If you want to see that, you have to go to a pretty revolting platform to find out what his thoughts are around that, but we've kind of covered that off tonight. So let's have a look at Seymour this morning on breakfast. He was talking to John Jay, and they were talking a little bit about tino rangatiratanga and also who is writing this bill that you're talking to us so much about.
What's your definition of tino rangatiratanga? What does it mean?
Well, it's self-determination. It's something that ACT actually really lives for, the idea that each of us have chances and choices in life and should be able to choose for ourselves where we go, because we believe that this country, like any other, can only flourish when each individual has the opportunity to flourish in their own way.
So will that phrase now be explicitly in the Treaty Principles Bill?
The thing is about that they're not getting at this. Now, I'm no treaty expert, but tino rangatiratanga about self-determination, that's part of the whole argument that means Māori have self-determination. They didn't cede sovereignty. They have tino rangatiratanga, and he's just said tino rangatira is self-determination. So is he confirming it? Paula helps out. Paula always helps out. He misses the point on the rangatiratanga bit. It ain't individual. What a worse individualism, dude. What a worse human this shit is. So collective self-determination.
Yeah. Well, that depends on how the drafters come back. I mean, they're the experts in how you express something in law. So as far as an explicit phrase, what will it look like? That's those guys' job. My job is to set the intention of it, and that idea that each of us should have the chance and the choice to self-express and be the best person we can be. That I expect will be. That, for example, is what I see in charter schools.
Phrase guy? Who's writing it? Who is phrase guy?
You got to give him at least a bit of kudos for John Campbell in a serious interview using the word phrase guy. I mean, who is phrase guy? I get your point, John.
So the government has an outfit called the Parliamentary Council Office.
So it's got. So sorry, it's got. So it's with them now. Is it with them now?
Well, it was decided yesterday to send it to them. It will be very soon.
Okay. Did you watch Postcab yesterday? Watch the Prime Minister in Postcab?
That's the next question. We didn't go into that. So yeah, interesting. Someone in the chat I saw scroll past saying, yes, he did, Pat. He did just confirm Māori didn't see sovereignty by explaining what tino rangatira is. Any thoughts around that first little clip? I got two. They're all quite short, so don't panic. I see people going, do we have to listen to Seymour? They're all quite short, and it's it's important to know what the others are saying for you to get your arguments ready to push back. Chewy.
I'm pretty sure I can post all of these clips of Seymour successfully in a great Reddit subreddit called Confidently Wrong.
Right.
He's always so confident and it's so smug from his position that is just built on a pile of dog shit. Like he's wrong. He's wrong on this. He's wrong on what tino rangatira means. He's wrong. Just that's it. Just bigger letters.
Self-determination of the Māori culture and traditions independent of colonial governance.
Do they have that? Do Māori have that? Have they famously had that since the treaty was signed? Fucking no would be the answer. Like, I mean, this is the whole thing. Like, if Māori were constantly at the top of all the negative stats, poor healthcare outcomes, poor outcomes in interactions with the police and the judiciary, most incarcerated people, all of that sort of stuff, and they had full self-determination, you could sit there and go, well, their fault. But they don't. They're operating in a framework that they have very little say in because they're outvoted at every step for 150 years.
Yeah. Peter wanted to make sure we knew. Peter wanted to make sure we knew that it's actually confidently incorrect on Reddit.
I
just
take
in case.
I doff
my cap, sir. I doff my cap.
I was very confident I had it right, and I was in fact incorrect.
All right, next part of the conversation, Seymour. I find this actually quite scary. As Maya Angelou say, when someone tells you who they are the first time, believe them. Seymour is telling us again and again and again and again and again that he can flip Luxon. Now, I know most people kind of go, it's not going to happen. Luxon's going to not support it, yada, yada, yada. But Luxon is a weak leader. And I think, as you often say, Chewy, they've been dog walking him. So when Seymour, with the world's best freeze frame, says so confidently, I think he can change their mind. It's really, I find it to be concerning. Let's have a listen.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, people say that they won't support it, but no one's actually read the bill yet. As we're discussing, it doesn't exist. And no one's seen the response of the public.
So if no one's seen the bill yet, that goes both ways. That means Luxon might see it and go, oh, I like that, which is another reason we can't trust Luxon, which I think is kind of actually what he's about to say. And another fantastic freeze frame.
Always thought it's important to try and keep open mind about that and wait to see what people say. But the second point is, let's just imagine for a moment that you're right and that all that's going to happen, a bill will be drafted that articulates the treaty as a document that unites us all with equal rights. It goes to Parliament, it's debated there, it goes to select committee, people can have a say. Then whatever happens after that, we've introduced the idea that each of us have a right to participate and a say over what our founding document means and what our constitutional future is. And
he says it so bluntly, we've all got the right to have a say in the founding document. Like, it's be a good thing that actually, and I know that some people are going to push back against what I say this, but I often think about this. I mean, the previous guest talked about this being a covenant, and we talk about it being a contract law. And if you talk about it as a contract, no, not everyone's got the say in my contract with my bank. Sorry, the signatories have a say, not everybody. And he's basically going, well, if it fails, at least it'll carry enough division that people will be talking like they've got a right to push into a document that two parties signed. So he's saying that like that's a good thing. And look, I didn't ask Alistair this, but I was thinking it as we we're doing it. We've even heard Chloe say things like, yes, let's have a conversation around this. No, this is not the way to do it. So if this evolved into a conversation that was healthy and was worth something, maybe, but it's not the way that he's setting it up. I think what Chloe always says is you don't have that by having a binary outcome. Yes, no, we don't. That's not the way to have this conversation. Anything, Chewy?
Also, he says, let's let everybody have a conversation into our founding document. That's great. Anyone can have a conversation. Anyone can say whatever the fuck they want. Only some people will have the knowledge and the maturity to provide anything of value.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that just opening the gates, we know, because you could look at any comment section you like on any story that is published about Māori, and you will see some of the people that want to have their say on the treaty. And I'm sorry, I'll be real blunt here. You don't know what you're talking about. We don't need to hear from you. You can keep flaunting your spleen in the Herald comment section until you eventually get that comment section shut down again. Because you're stupid.
By the social media team. That's where you give them the kudos, eh? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I can't shake the feeling that Seymour knows that this is a dead dog. He is never going to get this through the select committee process. That's not his aim. He is an Atlas plant, and everywhere the Atlas touch, they kick off the division in society between the colonial people and the indigenous people. That is why he, like it's in the news now, he wants this to go through the full 6-month select committee process where people can have their say. That is an enormous amount of very motivated, very toxic people venting their poisonous thoughts on the indigenous people of this country. And people like us and people like the chat need to be just as fucking motivated and strong-willed to push back against what he wants to open up.
All right. So now we're going to get to the same part of the conversation where he basically says he thinks he can turn Luxon, which in another context sounds a bit dodgy, but you know what I'm saying.
Country that now has many strands, people from all over the world calling it home. I think it's critical that each of us actually lives in a country where we have the ability to do that. And I think once that discussion is started, it's going to be hard to say, no, we're going to go back to a world where unless you're an expert, which is rarely actually explained what that means, or unless you have the right view.
Expert means has the qualifications or the experience to speak into things. Like if you had brain surgery, you see the expert has been through the right schooling, they've done the other schooling, they've been trained in a hospital, they've gone through the system of being a hospital to be the senior doctor. That's what an expert is. You can see a train or a record of why they've now considered. The other thing about an expert is an expert needs to be considered to be an expert within society. Looking on the lawn of Parliament a couple of summers ago, people were pointing at people within that group of people protesting, saying they're experts. No. You have to be identified as and accepted as an expert to be an expert. Sorry if that sounds a bit elitist, but it's true. Like we can all be experts in our own minds. Expertise comes from experience and training, comes from a worldview, comes from qualifications and job. That's what it means to be an expert, Seymour. So don't play this stupid fucking game like, well, whatever that means. That's what it means.
The other thing I want to point out here, because you saw a little snap of it. This is a great freeze frame, and I'm going to talk for hours just so it can sit here. This little tactic that he's got of basically speaking to immigrants to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And he wants them on his side. He wants them to see that Māori have these special rights that they will never have. And he is hoping that they will not have the knowledge on the treaty or the understanding of the treaty, because they haven't been in this country very long, to agree with him.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to educate wherever we can.
Yeah. And it's really important as well, if you're in one of those communities and you're watching and listening, if you've got an inroad into that community, it's really important, because, you know, if, let's say that English is your second language and you're in the community and you're in New Zealand now, you know, nice, shiny looking man in a big suit saying he wants to make you feel really welcome to this country. It sounds like an appealing sort of a message. If you're in those communities, if you have access to those communities, it's really important that you actually share what's going on, because, you know, the best kind of, to come back to another religious term, but the best kind of evangelizing to convince someone of an idea is to do it through friends and family. That's the most effective way of doing it. And so it's good for you to know that. All right, we're going to go for a third time on this clip, see if we can get to the end,
And which is rarely actually explained what that means, or unless you have the right view, then you can't discuss this. And that is the real exercise here.
I just want to go back to what you said at the beginning of that. Do you still hold out some hope that the Prime Minister, who has repeatedly said he won't, will support this beyond first reading, beyond select committee? Do you still think that's a possibility?
Well, I hate to be finicky, but the government doesn't actually have a position. So the Prime Minister
the National Party.
The National Party.
Would you like, I mean, I can quote you what he said again yesterday. I've got lots of those quotes.
Oh, I've seen what he said. We've said it to each other in private and in public, but I just make the point that at this point, no one's actually read the bill. No one's actually seen the submissions to the select committee. No one's seen
It's actually another point, isn't it? Why the fuck has he not got the bill out yet? Why is he leaving it for so long? I mean, we've been talking about this since October, November of last year. Is there actually a reason, a plan and a purpose as to why this is so long before it comes out? Is he allowing sort of the division to fester and foment? And then when he presents, is he doing what universities used to do when I was at school? And they'd go 15% increase on fees next year. And everyone would go, no. And they'd come back and go, okay, it's only going to be 10%. And the people who weren't aware of what they were doing would go, yay. And we'd all go, that's still 10%, guys. They've just fooled you. It's a bit of a shell game here. Is that what he's doing? Is he just basically making everyone fight over nothing, get into a rage, and then when it's presented, it almost doesn't matter what he says. You've already got the sides picked. Is that what it's about?
I think in a way, like he knows he's not going to get this across the board. There's no fucking way. Like he doesn't have the numbers for this. So that's not the aim. The goal for this is division.
Yeah.
The goal for this is to enable that incredibly toxic discussion to happen without experts, because we'll chip away at their expertise. You know, who decides what an expert is? You know, all of this sort of stuff. They're going to minimize those guys' opinions, and that's lawyers and scholars and people that have studied the treaty.
Yeah.
You know, why do we need to know about that when fucking Barry the mechanic from Gore doesn't understand, you know, what a treaty settlement is? We need to hear from him.
You don't get too hard on Barry. He's not a bad guy. You know what it is though? It's Trumpian. Trump's been saying
he's a good mechanic. He's a bad treaty scholar, and you fucking know it.
Fair. This is Trumpian. You know, Trump for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks has been talking about tomorrow's debate and how unfair it's going to be. And he's been talking about how it's rigged and how the hosts are going to be bad to him. And he's calling Stephanopoulos Slopodopoulos. And he's now going to go into that. And I think may well get smashed. We'll talk about this after, actually, not interrupt this clip. And then he's able to actually come back and go, see, I told you, unfair. I didn't lose, unfair, but the same. He's able to then go back and say, yep, see? All right, I promise this time, 35 seconds to go.
Sorry, can you answer my question? It's a very explicit question, a very specific question. Do you still hold out some hope that Christopher Luxon and the National Party, who said yesterday, again, our position is really clear, we are supporting it to first reading, but not beyond that, do you still hold out some hope that he will support it beyond that?
Oh well, if you want a one-word answer, yes. I was just giving you some of the reasons why.
There you go. There's the next clip. Now, we've talked all the way through that, so we might have said all we need to say. Is there anything else you want to add about that? We've got one more to go, which is actually quite a good... John Campbell kind of nails me a bit in the last clip.
No, I've got nothing to add.
Roll on, Macduff. So this is actually... It's interesting because I don't talk about Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay is what's just happened, and maybe we'll just intercede these two stories together a little bit. Is it that one there? There we go. So this is the story. I actually thought this would be in the news tonight, but it wasn't. I didn't see it in the news. Māori and Pacific young people dropped from list eligible for free GP visits in Hawke's Bay. Māori and Pacific young people in Hawke's Bay are no longer eligible for free GP and nurse visits based on ethnicity after the health minister intervened. So he had to actually come out and actively do something. It wasn't like, oh, it ran out of funding. He actually had to put himself in the middle of this and actually do something about it, which he did. The move has been labelled devastating for the community by one MP. Over the weekend, Stuff reported on a recent change to funding for free GP and registered nurse visits in Hawke's Bay for rangatahi, aged 14 to 24. Instead of being available for all young people in the region, new criteria were introduced from September the 1st, making Māori and Pacific those living in high deprivation, those who hold a community services card, or those or those with specific long-term health conditions eligible. But this has again changed, with the Māori and Pacific criteria now dropped from the list after Health Minister Dr. Shane Reti spoke with health officials about the policy on Monday. Now people in this age group with the greatest healthcare needs will be prioritised, Health New Zealand says, and able to access these services free if they were a list of things. And there was a part of this as well, which basically he did actually say, here we go. A spokesman from Reti's office told Stuff that the minister strongly communicated back to Health New Zealand. So this is the other thing. We keep getting told by people like the Prime Minister, oh, that's up to the chief executive. Although we don't intervene, that's up to the chief executive. Until something happens that they don't like, and chewy, then they intervene. It's kind of it's ironic, that, isn't it? So he made
it's all bullshit, Pat.
Almost like it. The criteria were, quote, not consistent with government policy, and certainly not consistent with his government's policy statement on health. Other quotes have him saying it doesn't fit in with the coalition agreement as well. So the reason I bring that up, that's almost one of those stories done as quickly as that, is it comes up in this conversation, but it comes up as Seymour trying to score points, and John Jay makes a very good retort to it. And actually, I think, not that this is an argument, but if it was, sort of wins the argument.
Can we go to what problem you think is being addressed?
It's a great question, by the way. It's a great question.
We like
so in what way are non-Maori impacted or disadvantaged on a daily lived basis by te tiriti?
Well, I'll give you one example. In Hawke's Bay just this week, the local health authority decided to end free doctors' visits, unless, of course, you're Māori or Pacific, for people at a certain age.
Okay, let's pick up on that. So let's pick up on health. Māori life expectancy 7 years shorter than non-Māori. Is it perverse and almost cruel to represent that as some form of advantage?
So Seymour doesn't quite get this. So John's basically saying 7 years, they die 7 years younger. Therefore, it's fairly obvious they need more help within the health system. Therefore, taking away this health is basically discounting the idea that it's a problem that they die 7 years younger. I'll go back to it and give it a bit more time. So he says better than me.
Let's pick up on that. So let's pick up on health. Māori life expectancy 7 years shorter than non-Māori. Is it perverse and almost cruel to represent that as some form of advantage?
Well, I haven't represented that as some sort of advantage, but let's have that discussion.
It felt like you were doing it just then.
It is.
So in other words, because you die 7 years sooner, you get an advantage to go to the health system. So therefore, dying sooner means you have an advantage to go and get free healthcare when you're a child. And Seymour saying that's an advantage that Māori have, that they die 7 years sooner. That's the logical conclusion.
advantage. But let's have that
discussion. It felt like you were doing it just then.
It is. I beg your pardon?
It felt like you were doing it just then.
Well, absolutely not. I referred to the access to medical care, and I'd make the point that while it's certainly true that if you group all Māori people together and if you group all non-Māori people together, then you can produce the statistic that non-Māori live 7 years longer. That is true. However, my question is why your lens for grouping people in the first place was their ethnicity. You may have...
Because that's where the need is. This is this consistent thing we talk about. You're happy to group, let's say, infants with vaccines because they're the ones who get them and need them. You're happy to group females with breast cancer or males with prostate cancer. You're happy to group all these people together because there is a need within that group. When the need within the group is a race, all of a sudden you go, no, can't group them like that. Can't group them like that. But the reason they group them like that is statistically that shows that there is a need there. And he's kind of going, why would we even do it by race? Because it's proven that there's a need there. Just because you don't like it and you think in your warped little mind that it means there is an unfairness that these people die. It's unfair to group Māori and give them some health privileges or health access that we don't get because they die 7 years sooner. So therefore, let's take that access away. And it means you can just die 7 years sooner. It's his thinking is scrambled, Chewy. Do you want to say anything before I push play?
Yes, absolutely. We never try anything different.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time we try and target something, we might get 3, 4, maybe 8 years. Not really enough to shift the needle. We've had hundreds of years of our supposedly free and fair health system. We've had over 100 years of our apparently colorblind judicial system. Same with education. So when someone like Seymour says that's fine, that's how it should be, we're going to look at need and we're going to be colorblind, but we still have these issues. He's almost saying it's I'm just going to come out and say it. Māori are just inferior. That's why they don't live as long. That's why they're not as smart. That's why they're prone to criminality. That's what's behind this white supremacist message that he will come. He'll talk about fairness and equality. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, and he knows it. Like we don't hear it. It's like that quote from The Simpsons: "We've tried nothing, and we're all out of ideas."
Mark has got just basically packaged what I stumbled over for 3 minutes and made the exact example. We should remove accessibility ramps. They're an unfair advantage for disabled people. Exactly the point. I often talk about disabled parking. Get rid of that disabled parking because it's closer to the building. It's an advantage for the disabled people that I don't get. Therefore, it's not fair. So yeah, exactly right. All right, let's go back. Sorry,
I got one more thing. The other thing that he is going to lean on, right, is the obvious pressure that our health system is under. There's not enough GPs, there's not enough nurses, there's not enough doctors. The wait times are really long. So that helps him with his message that he's aiming out there to Pākehā, that if Māori at the front of the list, then you fucking miss out. The other part of this is we need more doctors. We need more nurses. We need better hospitals. We need money for those things so no one misses out. But if there's a fear that you're going to be bumped off a list because you're non-Maori, that's scary. And fear is where these guys like Seymour, that's where they live. That's where they get their votes from. Fear. That's my story.
Okay, I was just because I think this is the perfect time, as many times as we have used this, which is probably hundreds, to bring up the old, what Seymour wants is he wants equality. And as you can see, quality doesn't help this poor little dude here. Whereas equity helps everyone. Even though Captain Yellow Pants didn't receive anything, Chewy, Captain Yellow Pants received nothing in the deal. Little Boy Blue Pants actually received twice as much as Little Boy Green Pants. But that is what equity looks like compared to what this is making us all equal under the law, making us all equal. Everyone gets one box, and he thinks that's the fair outcome. That's the equal outcome. But we want to look for equity. We want to look to see what the need is for people, even if it means somebody misses out on their box.
I'd also point out that ACT voters are inside the stadium, have seen these three people looking over the fence and are calling the cops.
Yeah, it's probably true as well. Okay, let's get to the end of this conversation, because this also now turns into a beautiful sort of dance by Seymour using the word "I suspect" lots. So of course all research and stuff goes out the window now, and we get a lovely roll of David Seymour feels. I suspect, and I suspect, and I suspect.
Why your lens for grouping people in the first place was their ethnicity. You may have seen an excellent interview on Q&A on the weekend where Jason Gurney made the point that actually the social determinants of health are what cause rheumatic fever that he happened to be talking about. It's largely about housing. I suspect it's to do with rural living.
Yeah, but then this is the point. Let's say if 80% of the people getting rheumatic fever are Māori because of the social housing, then is it really so bad to deliver across the board? I thought about this today, Joey. It's the across the board, right? So if 80% of people getting rheumatic fever, I don't know the numbers, by the way, were Māori, then that's where most of the funding is going to go anyway. And it's always better use of public money, a cheaper way to do it, to do a coverall rather than means test. You know, we've done this before for numerous things, whether it was, money being given out for COVID or whatever, but actually just giving it to everyone in that group, even the ones that didn't need it. So making doctors' visits available for everyone, even for the ones that don't go, is a much better, easier use of money. Like you were talking about GST, it's a simpler form of doing it rather than trying to figure out all the bureaucracy that you need for individual ones. It doesn't mean that the Pākehā kid down the road who's also got rheumatic fever won't also get it. Right. But it just means that you hit the area that most needs it. And so now he's going through these examples of rheumatic fever. So who is living in the poor housing? Who is getting rheumatic fever? Is it by chance Māori? I suspect it probably is in that area. So therefore, you can group it by race and saying they need the help. Yeah, there's some others on the side who need the help as well, who are Pākehā, who are Pacifica, who are Indian, who are whatever else.
So we can't look at race.
Yeah.
But we can go off learned elder David Seymour here and saying that his suspicion is that it's poor rural living and bad housing. Okay, yeah. So let's draw up the graph there of people that have poor health incomes, that live in shabby homes, poor quality housing in rural areas, right? And then let's draw up a Venn diagram. One of my favorite Venn diagrams. Are those people majority Māori? So are we accomplishing the same thing, or are we just shuffling the deck chair because you want to stir up racial division?
Yep.
Like there's someone in the chat. I'm not going to highlight the comments, but there's someone in the chat going, "Yeah, well, I know Māori that lived on old age." We're talking about something that is statistically noticeable, statistically measurable over a statistically important period of time. Studies have happened for decades to generate this information that you can go, there's correlation here, there's causation here. If you can identify what the problem is, you can solve it. And then when we go in to swoop it and say, hey, look, these people have a lifetime of poor health incomes. And it could be access to medicine. It could be trust in the system. It could be their housing. Is David Seymour here advocating for a big housing project to put people in better homes? No, he's not doing that either. Like, he is just dodging every question and not holding a position apart from the fact that somehow treating people equally is going to magically fix the statistic issues that we have with Māori population. And I'll keep repeating it. What he wants people to go is shrug their shoulders and go, it's because they're inferior.
Bad genes.
And that should make you feel yucky, New Zealand. It should fucking creep you out. Right. He's a step away from a eugenics program.
Okay, we are going to get to the end now, I promise.
It's largely about housing. I suspect it's to do with rural living, far away from medical support. I suspect that it might have something to do with diet. I suspect that smoking rates might be a factor. And the point is, John, once you drill into the practical determinants of why some people live longer than others, you can actually do something about it. Whereas if you just say, oh, it's a race thing, then first of all, that's incredibly divisive. And second of all, it doesn't actually give you practical steps you can take to solve the problem. And so you asked me, how does the treaty being interpreted as a partnership between races?
I love what he says here. He says this all the time and no one ever pushes back. Let's push back.
Disadvantage non-Maori New Zealand is actually having a society where race is your primary determinant of who a person is and what their identity is. That disadvantages all of us. And the challenge for people who oppose the treaty principles bill is to explain where in the world has dividing people and categorizing them by their ancestry and their ethnic background been a success. There are no good examples, but there's many bad examples where it's gone wrong.
Okay, you ready for this? You ready for this? Seriously, this is the easy answer. Affirmative action. Affirmative action is the answer to that question.
Is that what you meant, David? Is it?
Yeah, because he says it's not anywhere. You can't see that anywhere. In fact, I did some research on it today. I haven't bought it. I'll look it up and maybe tomorrow. And I saw an article that research says affirmative action has helped white women more than anybody. But affirmative action is something that's happened in the States, that's gone through the States, that is obviously based on someone's DNA, gets an advantage, and it's worked. So yeah, David, affirmative action. So next question. Anyway,
Seymour is excellent at weaponizing the language of his opposition. He loves turning it around. And the easy thing there is just to turn it back around on him again. Like, let's just spin like a fucking whirling dervish until he's so confused about what his actual fucking point is. But yes, he's devious. He wants you to get caught up in his debate club arguments. He doesn't live in this. He doesn't live in this space. His objective, he is not fair dealing. He is not here in good faith. No. That is everything that I talk about when we talk about David Seymour and we talk about ACT.
Yep, 100%. All right, let's get to the super chats. We'll have a quick chat about the debate tomorrow. Share some feels, and then we'll go from there. Kathy says, for flea treatment for our BHN mascots. This one, this flea treatment. She's actually due. Oh. Actually, that's a fair point. Mr. Arvid's stuff ran a story tonight saying the bill is going to be at select committee for 6 months. Hooton was right. They just want to stir hate. Another one from Mr. Arvid's. Here's why everyone having their say is bad. David Seymour wants Brian Tamaki to have a say on Te Tiriti. There you go. Seymour is using 2016's pro-Brexit rhetoric. Experts were presented as suspect by Brexit campaigners. Tawhiri, a macabre epiphany. I like how people use big words to try and trip up me. I got it that time. Macabre epiphany. Those who voted NACT to stop race-based healthcare for Māori now are also struggling to get treatment for themselves under NACT. Yeah, interesting point, actually. Mr. Arvid says, breaking news, the world's worst human doesn't understand stats. What the actual fuck? Do we stop the census, little wax figure man? Okay. Tiffany says, Tumeki, Chewy, and Pat, more tikanga than see less. See less. I see what we did there. And Kiwi Bird says, I have no hair left because David Seymour caused me to pull it out. All right. Chewy, debate 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow time. If you're at work, you want to be, checking it out, you follow me on Twitter. I'll be having some tweets about it as I watch it. And I'll also put on the The Facebook page and my Twitter feed, a good place to go do some watch-alongs if that's what you want to do as well. So, Chewy, here's my thoughts around that debate, super quick. I think that it's really unfortunate that the mics aren't open. So they've got closed mics and they've got no audience. And I think it's really unfortunate, those two things, because Trump can't help himself and he wants to bully and push around. But the thing is, she's a fucking prosecutor. She argued in court as a prosecutor. Now, I'm not saying what she did and what she prosecuted was all that fantastic, but the skills of a prosecutor, they keep talking about her being, I mean, I know this is only their rhetoric, but being dumb and not being able to do a debate and stuff. She's a prosecutor. Her life, her job, her income was arguing in court as a living. That's what she did. I think, and how many times have I said things like this and been completely wrong, but I think Trump is going to have his clock clean? Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I think she's going to annihilate him. And if the mics are open, it would be even better. And if there was an audience, it would be even better. So I'm really disappointed that there's not those two things. But I think he's in big trouble tomorrow. I think that she'll wipe the floor with him.
Because I think the debate there is an actual normal person versus an insane racist.
Yeah.
So it's not even a fair fight. Something that came across my eyes while we were doing the show today. I'm going to show you the cover of the Atlantic magazine. Now, the blurb that comes with it is this is the Atlantic's October cover, likely to be the first in over 160 years of the Atlantic being published with no headline or no description of the stories inside. This is their cover image. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. That image goes hard. Yeah. There's so much to look at.
So just I know where you guys probably know this, but for the one person that doesn't, the elephant is the sign of the Republicans, and Trump has locked up the elephant and is riding it to Washington, whoever the hell he wants. That's how I see that, at least, anyway.
Yeah, that's a good cover.
Yeah.
That's a good image. Look, and if the momentum for prominent Republicans to say, hey, look, I'm crossing the floor because Trump is bad for this country, if that carries on, then yeah, good. But as I always point out with the American system, it is so hopelessly corrupted that it's not anywhere near our elections.
Yeah, and how they can
does not necessarily mean a win.
Since about 1995, other than 2004, the Democrats have won every single election if you class it on number of votes, right? They've got the most votes in every single election in the last 30 years, except for 2004. Yet they've only been in power half the time. That just in and of itself is wrong. And also, you get the representation distortions as well. Like states with 1 million people have 2 senators, and states with 30 million people have 5 senators or 2 senators, or and so thumb on the scale. I don't know, it's never going to happen. But you really, if someone could go over there and sort out their electoral system, so this is the thing, right? They'd have to clean themselves up. At the moment, they don't have to clean themselves up because the system is broken and no one's trying to fix it, Democrat or Republican. They're not trying to fix it. If they fixed it, I think what you'd see, hopefully, is you'd see a change in rhetoric and you see a change in the politicians. All of a sudden, there'd be a chance that they may or may not be in. But they all just kind of have their turn for 2 or 3 cycles, then they have their turn, and then they have their turn, and it works for them. But it does need to burn to the ground and start off again, but it's never going to happen. Gareth says, regarding the worst human, if you come at the king, Nicole, you best not miss. All right. Anything else, Chewy? I think I've got a question for you all. Do you know Threadless? Threadless, the t-shirt and hoodie shop?
Mm-hmm.
So I went on Threadless the other day, and I got a whole bunch of super cheap t-shirts, $12.50. Look, bought like 10 of them. So super cheap, yeah? We're down from like $30 to $12.50. And then I filled up, I do this all the time with online shopping. I filled up my cart. Then I kind of walked away and I don't need to spend any money. They've just sent me an email saying, if you take the things in your cart, we'll give you another 25% off. I don't know if I can turn that down. What do you think?
It's a pretty good deal.
It's a pretty good deal. I'll have to go think about that. All right, I'm done for the night. Is there anything else you want to wrap up with, Chewie? Anything else you want to mention?
No. Oh, actually, I do want to point out that Woolworths staff went on strike today over pay and conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that on the news.
What's been pointed out in that story is that people that work in the supermarket can't afford to shop in the supermarket. That sounds dystopian as fuck, considering that company had $40 million just lying around for a sneaky rebrand.
Well, that's the argument you always hear from people who work in hospital in Queenstown, eh? People who work in hospitality in Queenstown can't afford to live in Queenstown, so they all drive half an hour out of town to live, so they can then come into town and service people who can afford to live there. Same sort of thing. Shocking. Yep, maybe we'll follow that up. All right, team. It's been a good one. Thanks so much to Alistair Reese for coming and joining us tonight. We are always grateful to have experts in the room and to be the dumbest people in the room. It always makes life a lot more enjoyable to be able to pass on that information.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing what war puff to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, team. That's us. See you later, alligators. Guru, thank you for that. Have a good night. I've noticed some people in the chat talking about the music getting soft. I think there might be an auto setting on that I'll investigate tomorrow, like an auto mic dimming. Might have to speak to our technical expert about that, if that's what's happening. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for Alistair for coming on. Thanks for you for being with us. There's been a lot of people watching tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of a Big Hairy News. It's a goodbye from me, Chewie.
And it's a hooroo from me.
Hooroo.
Be cool
Hooroo,
to each
team.
other, everybody.
Hooroo. See you, bye. Have a good one. Bye. Here's that guitar you love so much, Chewie.
Oh, puppy.